Hello and welcome to the second episode of Straight Out of College. I'm Daniel, a soon-to-be graduate from the University of Toledo. For any new members joining us, Straight Out of College is a podcast that focuses on what life is like or what it might be like after graduation. We interview college students and graduates to see what their perspective on the transition from college to post-graduation is kind of like. So today we'll be interviewing Trevor Oxley. Trevor, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man. This is exciting.
Faux show. So, just to start it off, do you think you can tell me what you majored in, your graduation date, what career you want to have, and it's maybe a fun fact about yourself?
Yeah, sure thing. So I graduated last Saturday, so I guess for all the viewers, that's spring of 2019, with a Bachelor of Science in Health Care Administration. And it's a great field. It's a great field to go into, but we're getting an MBA and kind of diversify a little bit so I can actually go into a bunch of different industries. So I kind of figure out what companies and what areas I like, and then from there going a little bit more in depth or in focus a couple of years down the road.
Cool.
And a fun fact about me is, I'm a big movie buff. I think I'm a pretty big movie buff.
Yeah, what's your go-to movie?
My go-to movie?
Yeah.
Oh, man. Is it something I'm watching late at night, trying to fall asleep, or my favorite movie?
All-time favorite.
All-time favorite movie? Oh man, that's still even tough. I could probably give you a top three, but maybe not a single one.
Alright, let's hear it.
Alright, I gotta go Step Brothers at number one, because that's kind of the movie I just play when I'm bored.
Yeah.
So when I'm sitting writing a paper or just working on something stupid, I'll just put that on in the background and just kind of laugh around with it.
That's also my favorite. Fun fact.
Yeah. Oh, it's so funny. There's just so many small things. It's when you watch it every single time, there's another quote or something that sticks out and it's hilarious.
Yeah.
I would have to go with The Shawshank Redemption. I think that's one of the best movies of all time.
Okay. That one's my brother's favorite. Yeah. He used to watch it all the time on Netflix. He had it saved so that he'd always watch it. Mm-hmm. And then my parents ended up buying the DVD for him, and he hasn't used the DVD once.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I the first time my dad said, "Hey, we're gonna watch this movie. It's supposed to be incredible," and my sister watched it with him, and I was and he told me what it was called, and I was "There's no way this movie's any good. It sounds like it's gonna be some sort of horror movie or something ridiculous."
Right.
And I was looking at the cover, and I had no idea it was about a prison break. So it was pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
Number three.
Yeah.
Ooh. This one's gonna be a little bit weirder. I'm actually gonna go with Benchwarmers.
Benchwarmers, okay.
You know that old baseball movie from when it probably came out when we were 10?
Yeah.
It had John Heater and David Spade in it, Rob Schneider.
Mm.
It was just, it's just one of those things I watched so often when I was growing up that it's just got so much sentimental value.
Right. Cool. So, just to start off, so how did you end up getting into this major? What got you motivated to want to go after this major?
Ooh, that's a good question. So, starting out at Toledo, I was a rec therapy major, and it was that's kind of on the borderline of science and therapy. So you take chemistry and biology courses as well as basic giving care for people. So kind of a little bit of what nursing do. But I realized, I think after a semester, or really after my first science course, that this was not it for me. I'm not a science guy at all. I'm pretty bad at it. So courses like chemistry and anatomy is I can do it, but it's really tough on me. So I actually then switched to business, and I'd always been kind of interested in business, but never to the point where I wanted to be in a job where things are just super, super competitive all the time.
Yeah.
So when I thought of business, I was thinking mostly of sales and guys car salesmen, insurance. And I've noticed from growing up, there was plenty of people that was just you could tell they were almost fake friends with you, or with your family, just trying to get them to buy something. So I didn't really want to do that.
Yeah.
And this is when I'm 18, still really don't know what's out there. I actually transferred out of that, and I found a spot right kind of in the middle, and that's where Health Care Administration kind of falls down.
Okay. It has a nice blend of everything you like to do, kind of.
Yeah.
Okay. So how's life going right now? Just how has that transition been so far? Just getting out of graduation, are you looking for jobs, or have you got anything lined up?
Yeah, we're doing grad school applications right now, and I'm a little bit late, but this past semester was a little bit rough on me, but there's one thing I can say, it's that you just get super tired and irritated of especially, family, friends, and adults asking you, like, do you have a job lined up? Do you have a job lined up? Do you have a job lined up?
Mm-hmm.
Then you gotta explain to them the whole thing. And it's like one of those things, you hear it all the time. It's just like, I'm so done with it.
Yeah.
Especially coming back home, you start seeing people that you haven't seen in probably about a year or two. And they're like, oh my gosh, how have you been? All that stuff. But it's been cool, graduation it's a really weird feeling because you kind of don't realize, like, this is the last time you're, going to class here.
Right.
I don't think it's hit in yet, but I probably won't be heading back up, to that area very much.
Mm-hmm.
But also part of me is super excited because I have a chance to go out and chase something new now.
Right. So are you, do you kind of want to work more closer to home, or do you want to go somewhere outside?
Well, West Virginia doesn't really have much of an economy going for it, so
yeah.
I'd prefer to get out if I can.
Yeah, I remember wasn't their slogan "West Virginia open for business" or something a couple years ago? I thought that was kind of.
They did. They changed it back, but nobody came.
Yeah.
I guess I don't know what the thought was. Maybe if they just changed the slogan, people would magically come.
Yeah.
I don't know. All right, yeah. So I'd like to go somewhere down south. Hopefully where the weather's a little bit warmer.
Right.
I have a friend down in the Dallas area, and that's a really booming area. So he's trying to pressure me to get down there once I'm done with everything.
Yeah, that'd be cool. So you said you're going to graduate school after this?
That's the plan. Whether I go in the fall or in the spring, I don't know yet. It kind of depends. I have until July to get all of the applications turned in for the fall. So,
right, so you still have time.
Yeah, so I'm trying to study for the graduate school exam. For the business school, it's the GMAT. For most everything else, it's the GRE.
Okay. And then would you be going back to Toledo for that?
I don't think so. I love Toledo, like the campus. I love the people I've met. I love pretty much what it has done for me. But I absolutely hate the city, and I am not a fan of the weather at all.
Yeah.
It's gray all the time, dude. It doesn't make any sense to me.
It's actually, I'm looking outside, it's gray right now. It was 80 degrees and beautiful, and today it is 60 degrees and cloudy.
It doesn't make any sense. You'll be, walking around, it was the week before finals, and it's 50 degrees outside, and I get a phone call from the house, and it's my mom saying, she's like, oh, it's 80 degrees, I'm working out in the yard, doing this and that, and I'm just like, yeah, well, it's 50, and I think it might snow, I don't know. At some point,
yeah.
I think I got to wear, shorts outside, once, maybe, this semester, so it's, at some point, it just kind of catches up to you,
Right.
Especially not being used to it. You're from, Cleveland area, so it's,
yeah.
I'm sure you're more used to this weather, but for me, it was definitely a change.
I feel like it's something you don't get used to, you just always hate it. But, yeah, I mean, me, I occasionally get into seasonal depression just because, when it is super cold out, whenever it gets nicer out, I'm just so happy, and then fall comes around, and it gets cold again, and I get sad. So I think that's one thing a lot of people might not really think about is that just figuring out where you want to live with whatever major you're going into, what you're doing, just because where you live can have a big impact on what makes you happy to do whatever it is you're doing, because you might be having your dream job, doing what you want to do 40 hours a week, but you could be in Alaska where it's always super cold, dark out. And I feel like that's one factor that people might not really take into consideration as much as they could. And I think that's an important thing to consider is not necessarily just the job type, but the area as well. Is it a place that you're going to enjoy living? And with me in Toledo, I love Toledo. I love the atmosphere. I just don't really care for the weather because it's almost always cold or rainy out here, which is kind of a bummer.
I have a quick story, but I remember my freshman year, I woke up and I had an 8 a.m. course, and I lived in HAV, so you know where that is. And I had to walk up that hill towards Rocket Hall. So it's kind of the exact opposite path that every other student is going on.
Yeah.
But so when you're walking from Presidents or whatever down towards the academic part, you're going downwind for the most part.
Right.
But when you walk from HAV up to Rocket Hall, you're going upwind. And this day it was 15 degrees, 20 mile per hour winds. And I remember just walking up there, and I was verbatim, tears are just rolling out of my eyes. Not me crying, just it is so cold, and the wind is just hitting you that you're tears are forcing you to come out.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking to myself, why the hell am I here? Why did I do this?
Yeah, even when we're not sad, it looks like we're sad. Oh yeah, I get that too. Do you remember the one time it was like in the negatives? It was like negative 30 degrees out, and I had a fraternity meeting, and I don't know what it was. It was like fraternity, some sort of meeting or something. And I was just walking over, and like the whole time, just tears coming out of my eyes. Same thing. Like, it's crazy.
It's crazy how like weird it is, because do you remember when like the polar vortex hit? Like it was like negative something.
Yeah, yeah.
I remember I just ran outside, and I didn't think it was like as bad as that day. You know.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what it was, but it's always deceiving, because it could be 30 and feel like it's 0, or it could be 0 and feel like it's 40, you know?
Yeah.
The wind gets you.
It's really the winds every time, for sure. Cool. So, what are some past challenges that you face, like just going through college, with classes, or just anything that's like got in your way, and what are some things that you've done to kind of overcome it?
Oh, okay. The first one would definitely be just going to UT. Being a kid from West Virginia, you know, I don't know if there's anybody else from the state of West Virginia that goes to UT. You know, I'm really in a situation where I think I knew one dude before I got there, and that was just like some weird, like, oh, hey, you got a UT shirt on, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So it's, you know, that part is incredible. I showed up to a place where I didn't know anybody, so you're kind of like put in a situation where it's like you got to go out and meet people, or you're not going to make it, you know? Transfer back home within the semester. I've seen some other cases like that. I had a friend this year who was a freshman, and he left, you know, right after first semester because he was from Rhode Island and missed it all. So I think that was the biggest thing. And living in HAV, they had that like lounge area, so I would just hang out in there.
Yeah.
And eventually would come by, and so, well, you got to meet them at some point.
Right.
And I don't think in high school I was the most social kid. I was like a nice kid, but I don't think I was the one like real extroverted. So that was actually kind of tough for the first, you know, week or so, trying to figure all that stuff out, because you really don't know what you're doing at college until like after a month has gone by. You don't really know who you really want to hang out with. You don't know what you're really into. It's kind of like that first month is just getting to know everything. Learning how to do laundry.
Yeah, laundry. I'm still trying to figure out how to make my clothing not wrinkly. I heard there's like this machine where you put hot air on it, or hot steam or something, that it just becomes not wrinkly. I have to look more into that though. I have to further my studies with the non-wrinklage.
Yeah. Laundry and cooking have been something else, man.
Yeah.
I do say though, I think I make a pretty good grilled cheese nowadays, but
yeah. One of the things that I've actually just recently learned how to do is I've discovered the oven. So instead of putting all your food in the microwave, if you put it in the oven instead, it actually has a much better texture to it.
Oh yeah. I think I'm learning how to grill as well. I didn't grill a whole lot, you know, growing up, but like not like a George Foreman grill, but like an actual like outside grill. We got one of those 2 years ago, and I've been going at it ever since.
Yeah, I'm still working on that one. I don't have any grilling experience yet, so that one's not on my resume just yet.
Yeah, I'm learning how to put all the seasoning on chicken and pork and all this stuff, making it taste better.
Yeah.
I think another big challenge of mine has been like really like kind of balancing studying, because I think most college kids can tell you there's normally like 1 or 2 courses that you'll get that are just like straight up killers. Whether it's like some sort of like freshman math you're taking, like, you know, like statistics or whatever, where you're doing like Alex or spin gauge or mind tap, whatever, and you're doing those problems like all throughout the week because the homework is so much of it. Or there's just a course that is just something you're not really like good at or fond of. Like for me, it was anatomy and physiology. You have to work so much harder at some of your other courses. I think sometimes that's just how it is. You know, you have classes where you don't do any homework or anything. You have like 2 exams, and then you have other courses where you have like weekly quizzes and homework due like every 3 days. You know?
Yeah.
So like having a way to like figure out how to get everything done and like kind of making like a internal scheduler for yourself or whatever. I think that was one of the things that I really had to learn about.
Yeah, definitely. Like, I feel like a lot of it's definitely time management and just dedicating certain amounts of time to certain things and knowing how long it'll take to study for certain things. But yeah, also just knowing how to study, because I feel like if a lot of people that go to college might not have ever had to study just because they've always gotten those good grades, and so having to adapt to not necessarily automatically knowing how to do everything and then learning like how to actually study. You can't just like skim over the notes. You have to actually write stuff down, work on the problems, blah blah blah.
I don't know about you, but I'm like the kind of kid that like, if you tell me I have a project due in 2 months, I'm not going to start that immediately.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like if you tell me it's due in 2 months, I'm gonna do it like I'm gonna start working on it like a week before it's due. Like, and I feel like terrible. That's the way I am. But that's, you know, I see a deadline. It's like, all right, well, like it's coming up. I got to start working on it. And that's always been one of my big issues. You know, whether it's writing like a super long paper or like really anything. If I have a take-home exam or, you know, have you ever had a class like that where you had to like do an exam by a certain date?
Yeah.
It's mostly like online stuff for me. I realize that stuff.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
Online classes are just kind of like its own like element. You know, like the first time you have an online class, you have no idea what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
Or at least I didn't. I was like, you know, I didn't look at the syllabus or anything. I didn't know whether I needed the book or anything. Taking some random course that probably doesn't mean anything online, and it's just like, ugh. I remember I missed like my first like 2 or 3 assignments in one course just because I didn't know they were due. Because you know how on how on Blackboard they have like the, you know, to-do tab. The way this course is set up is you emailed everything to your professor within Blackboard, so it didn't pop up on there. So I had to like verbatim like print out like a copy of the schedule and like post it somewhere so I would know what I had to do. Yeah,
you definitely always have to like be on top of everything when it comes to that.
And things sometimes, you know, things just get lost. You know, you'll have like assignments overlap or whatever. Or, oh, I got it. You know, like real big pet peeve here is like when a teacher tells you that all your assignments are going to be due Sunday at 11:59, and then there's like 1 week where you have an exam and it's due on exam day. That is the absolute worst for me. I miss it every time. I mean, you know, obviously I'm still okay. I graduated, you know, with honors or whatever, but every single time that happened to me, I always missed it when they changed the deadline on me.
Which I think is just a bad example of miscommunication, for sure. For me, like, I've always been the opposite where whenever I get assignments, I do it as soon as I possibly can, but that could also work against me because I'll do an assignment, then we'll have a midterm like a month later, but I'll forget everything that I learned because I did it so soon. Whereas if you do wait to do it right before, like a week before, it can kind of benefit you because, one, it can kind of push you to do everything at a faster rate. Some people do better under pressure. And also, it's going to be easier to retain all the information right before the final. So, like, honestly, I think it's just really being able to find, like, a nice mix between the two of not waiting the last second, but also not doing it as soon as possible when it comes to, like, deadlines and everything like that.
Yeah. There's so many different ways that people get it done. I used to remember hearing people talking about they'd, like, power through their stuff through the week, kill themselves with whatever, or clubs or whatever classes they have, and then do their homework ASAP, and then the weekend they wouldn't do anything. So, I mean, there's definitely different ways to go about it. So, you know, you gotta figure out which way works for you.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was just never the guy who took the initiative to get it done early. I always thought I had time, especially when, like, writing papers or something. I would always just sit there, and, like, you know, if I knew I had time, I wouldn't be able to write.
Yeah, papers are the worst.
Always
for sure.
like, you know,
yeah.
I also just am terrible at writing. I just can't think of anything for the longest time.
Right. So what are some classes that you've taken over the years that, like, that you thought were helpful or not helpful? Or, like, how was the mix of that? Like, do you think a lot of the classes you've taken are going to help you with the industry you want to go into? Or do you think a lot of them are kind of not really helpful? Or what's your take on that?
I think a lot of it, for me, depends on the professor I get, because some professors, like, they try to adapt the material to, like, real-life situations, and some of them just teach you the material. Mm-hmm. So, for example, I took a leadership and healthcare course, which is really just a leadership course. There's no specialization or anything, you know. We're hearing stories about, like, the CEO of Costco, which is nowhere near healthcare.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that was one that really, like, taught me something, because the aspects and the way you think about things and the way you manage people, it all changed after that. Because realistically, the only, like, leadership and management tactics you know are, like, what you've learned throughout your jobs, sports teams, clubs, whatever.
Yeah.
So getting to hear, like, those different perspectives and what some of the top, you know, I guess leaders or authors who are leaders write about, that was something that I thought was really, really impressive. And I took that, like, my spring and junior year, and I applied a lot of it going into senior year.
Yeah.
And I think another course that was finance. I took it as an elective because I needed it as, like, a prerequisite for one of the graduate schools I plan on applying to. that one was really cool. It was a lot of work. I want to get that known. It is a lot of work. I didn't understand most of it, and I had to learn it all like a couple days before the exam. But he would do lessons on, like, if you're buying a house, you know, like, what would be the future value of, you know, that asset 20 years down the road? Or if you're buying a car, you know, if you pay this much down with this much interest, how much are you really paying on that interest? Or he did one actually with, like, the value of getting an MBA as like right out of school compared to like 3 or 4 years down the line. And, you know, that kind of stuff, that's like, those are like big life decisions. I think he did one on retirement. Like, how much money do you need to save? So that kind of stuff that really, you know, you're not going to find in a book or like on a test, but it's actually super, super important to what we're doing as throughout our lives.
Right.
I thought that was just totally awesome.
I definitely agree with you. Like, there's obviously those classes that you take in your majors where you're going to learn stuff that's relating to your majors, but then there are also going to be classes where the professors might not be the best, and even if it is in your major, you might not really learn anything. But then to counter that, you could have classes that are completely outside of your major, but because the professors are so good, those are the classes where you learn so much about. Like, for example, I took a good one was sustainability, some sort of like writing sustainability class where we learned how to present information in like a text format where like someone of like basic reading knowledge would be able to understand what you're saying, because it's one thing to tell someone to do something, but it's another thing to tell them how to do it on a step-to-step basis. And then like another thing we did in that class was we had to make some form of media where we can present whatever it is we're trying to show through like picture format. So like I did a little stick figure animation and just how to present something that might be a little more complicated to a younger like kids audience, people that might not be able to understand all those bigger words. And this class was actually kind of focused more towards engineering when I was in engineering, but these are things that you can really apply to just about anything really, because you're always going to need to explain how to do something to people. You're always going to need to kind of have that skill. And it's just really cool that you can get these skills from these classes you have to take that are outside of your main curriculum. A lot of the reasoning why you learn so much out of these classes is really not necessarily the course that you're taking, because I don't even remember what the name of the course was, honestly. It was just some writing class, but just because the professors are so good and they're so committed to making sure you're getting the most out of that class.
Dude, I agree with you 100%. Like, professors absolutely make the course, and it really doesn't matter what it is. That's just how it's going to be. I was taking a human resources course. As part of Health Care Administration, you get a general business minor, so you have to get, like, you touch up on all that subjects. So, in this HR course, it was so apparent that this dude had been teaching for, like, maybe 2 years. And he was nervous every time he walked into class. And, like, people were getting on him so much because they hated his tests, they hated, like, the homework assignments and group assignments because he was such a bad communicator that we had no idea what in the world was going on. And then I've taken courses where you've had a teacher who's been doing it for, like, 20 years, and, like, this is what he loves to do. And it's just so much different because, like, they take the time, they get to know everybody. They'll challenge you a little bit, but it's all in, like, the best way possible.
Right.
I don't know about you, but I love doing, like, group projects as a part of school. There's always, like, a little bit of, like, worry, like, if somebody's not going to do their part, or, oh, I really got to, like, touch this up or whatever to make sure we get, like, you know, the best presentation in course in the class or whatever. But group projects are, like, a really prime example of, like, how, like, the workplace can be. Like, regardless of what you're going into, there's going to be times where you have to work with other people, so this is just getting you ready for it. Right. And I don't understand why professors don't do it more often.
Well, so, my opinion on that is that I personally believe group projects, in theory, are great. Kind of like communism, you know. Communism, everyone gets treated equally. But the problem is, it only works in theory, because people aren't all going to do the work they're supposed to do all the time. Now, when group projects do work, it's amazing. There's one story I heard, I don't know if you've ever heard of Rhett and Link, but they have a podcast where they just talk about themselves. They're just like big YouTubers. And so, they used to be engineers, and so one of them was talking about how he had a group project, and he wasn't the best engineer, but he was really good at communicating and expressing whatever it is that they need to talk about. But the other people on the team they were all about the math and the science behind it, but they didn't really like to talk. So they used each other's strengths and weaknesses to get the A. And so when he presented, he killed it. I think he somehow made some sort of, not necessarily a parody, but like he made it into like a really big, funny kind of presentation, and they ended up getting like a really good grade. And that's just one way of showing how group projects can work. But how it's worked for me, with my experience in group projects, is I just do all the work, and then everyone else just kind of sits back and chills because they don't really care about their grades, so they're just letting everyone else do the work. So like for me, the idea of it's great. It's just a matter of getting the actual group to do the project as a group.
No, I understand that, and I think that kind of depends like what you're doing or why you're doing it, you know? Because I think sometimes when you do like a group project, like maybe it's not worth that many points in the course, so people don't like care about it as much. I think a lot of it also depends on who you're working with in the class, and I guess so is in work as well. Is some people just, you're right, just don't care.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know, if you get like stuck with that person in class who hasn't said a word the whole time and doesn't respond to text messages, like, yeah, it's gonna suck and you're gonna have to do more work. But like, you know, sometimes you get stuck with like 3 or 4 people who are like really excited about it and like, you know, working on it. I've been into like plenty of like group chats or whatever where everybody's talking all the time.
Yeah.
And I consider myself like somewhat of a leader, like maybe not a good one, but like somewhat of one. And I didn't really say anything except for like chiming in every once in a while, like an opinion.
Right.
So it really just depends like what group you're in. But like, you know, like I said, in work, like that can be the case. Sometimes you're gonna get stuck with somebody who's not good at their job.
Right.
And you gotta figure out ways. I love that you like brought up the story about Rhett and Link using like the strengths and weaknesses for their like project. I love that so much because that is like the ultimate way of getting things done. I think you see that in like so many different examples, and I think sports is one of the biggest ones. But like finding out what you're good at and then finding a way to apply that to the project is huge. You know, I've noticed like in my time, there's people who are like wizards at like PowerPoint. They can add like graphics and stuff and know how to make all that. And there's some people who are like really great communicators and will be great at presenting, and they don't stutter or anything.
Mm-hmm.
So like finding a way to do that. And I always hated that teachers made everybody talk because like that's their way of like them contributing, I guess, or like the only thing that they can see. But like realistically in the real world, it doesn't have to be that way.
Yeah. I liked what you said about how group projects is basically like work, because in the workplace you are really just working on a project together. And I think that's one really nice thing when you do get like to an internship or a co-op, is you kind of get that experience where everyone is doing that group project together and you're a part of it, where your role might not be as important because you're just an intern or you're a co-op, you have a co-op position. You still kind of get that feeling of like you do your portion of the work and then other people do what they need to do as well. And then everyone is committed to it, because if they're not, then they get fired. So it kind of forces people to do the work. But then also with that, some people might not do their work as well. You might not be able to collaborate as well. And I feel like that's also another really important factor when you finally get into whatever your full-time job is, you know, do you want to be in that group project with them? Like, is it worth the money or the time that you invest in putting into whatever group project that you're working on?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, show.
Yeah. Actually, that's really good. I actually had an internship this past semester, and I did it like 1 or 2 days a week. But one of the things that I was a part of was actually like a group project about like, it was pretty much dealing with product expansion. So it's really cool seeing everybody do their own separate like jobs, and then how it all comes together to like, because realistically, like I'm doing like, I did pretty much like market research, and then I saw somebody who was doing like a lot of like data analytics and like analyzing rates.
Mm-hmm.
And then I saw people who was like pretty much like skilled negotiators who was like talking to these people, our different like facilities and physician offices. I was working for a healthcare company, so you see like them all doing their separate jobs and how it all comes together in the end is like actually really cool.
Yeah.
But you're right, if someone doesn't do their job, then it makes it hard, and it really like, especially in a negotiation, will really tear you down if you don't know all what's going on.
Yeah. So you said you had a call at 2:15 that you had to get to?
Yeah, it's at 2:30, but I want to make sure
2:30.
like I haven't charged my phone for a little bit.
Cool. I was just double checking.
Yeah.
So let's move on.